Hey friend, I just wanted to do a little bit of a tribute to John Weathers. Being his birthday, it's a few minutes past, but he was always, it's hard to pick a favorite band member, but he's always been my favorite band member. Just so charming and funny and so talented, and he could hit drums so hard. And I mean, I just can't imagine Gentle Giant without him. I just wanted to play a little bit of a clip from previous podcast I did a while back with Gregg Bendian, and I asked him about the three drummers and what made them so special. So I wanted to share that with you, and it's mainly because there at the end, the things he says about John really is kind of astounding, coming from the caliber of drummer that Gregg Bendian is. If you have not heard his album Myriad, you need to stop what you're doing and play that. If nothing else, it'll be the biggest learning experience musically you'll ever hear. But this was a pretty special interview, and it deserves to be seen again, I think. So happy birthday, John, and to your family, I wish you all the best. Just keep being you, and long live the Giant.
John Weathers was also involved in groups like Eyes of Blue, who were kind of proto-prog, or in a way, all bands. I mean, even if you look at Cream, you know, it's early prog. I mean, at times you know, Choose a Tune, but there's so many elements where groups are trying to freak people out by doing something out of the ordinary. And so John, I want to talk about him at length. Here's the thing about the three drummers.
Okay.
You have to feel a little bit of compassion for Martin Smith, because Martin Smith, he's in the band Simon Dupree, right?
Yeah.
Everything's going to be in 4/4. Everything is going to be straight down the middle. It's going to be funky. It's going to, you know, I mean, okay, Kites maybe is an exception, but I would say he's at the nexus of the old way turning to the new way, right? So he has to adapt. There's no model for him. I mean, maybe if he had listened to Michael Giles, as many drummers did when In the Court of the Crimson King came out. But now you have guys that are writing music in different meters, changing meters. You have complex forms where you have to know that there's going to be an interlude and how to get out of the interlude back into the melody again. Martin Smith was, you know, on the balls of his feet trying to keep up with this stuff. And so you kind of get the sense that he's adjusting from being a rock drummer to be, you know, or R&B drummer to being a progressive rock drummer. And there really weren't, we didn't know what the qualifications would have to be so much. But if you listen to the stuff from Under Construction, where you can hear Derek or Phil, I'm not sure who it is, counting and directing while Martin is tracking, you can hear those outtakes. You understand that was a completely new area, that here's the next bar. It's going to be in 7, and we're going to transition, and then we need a drum fill into the transition. So I always felt that Martin was kind of a transitional drummer, and that Malcolm coming in was from a real different pedigree, as you heard in the interview that I did with him. You know, he's a jazz guy. He knew about playing a lot of different styles. He knew about playing a lot of different kinds of drums, a lot of drums. But the interesting thing about it was he also then realized, I can't play a bunch of drum stuff in this music because there's 5 other guys that are playing a lot of stuff. And if I play a lot of stuff, then it's going to be a big muck. So somebody's got to hold it down. And that was an interesting realization for Malcolm, because then John Weathers, same thing. He's and they, you know, they knew each other. Weathers had heard Giant with Malcolm on drums. And, you know, he realized that somebody's got to drive the bus, right? Somebody's got to conduct the band. And the drummer is driving from the drum seat. Phil Collins refers to the drummer as the goalkeeper in soccer. You know, he's sort of keeping things from getting out of hand. In progressive music, you know, depending on how jazz rocky it gets, and Giant were not a improv jazz rock kind of band. They were a composition band. You need a drummer who's going to be able to delineate all the sections and make it feel really good. Mm-hmm. Like, to me, John Weathers had the feel.
Oh, yeah.
Always had the, you know, almost like a Bonham, kind of like grooving, but laying it down. And then if he needed to, he'll hit you with a fill and he'll bring you into the next section. And so, you know, he became kind of a role model to how you would approach complicated music. Now in Mahavishnu, everybody's playing complicated stuff except the bass player. So somebody's got to hold it down. Okay. And then other people, you can't have everyone in the band going bazonkers the whole time. And the taste factor, the fact that John Weathers had a good sound, he had the taste of when to not play.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the beginning of No God's a Man. Think about the beginning of, Freehand, or the whole middle section of Freehand where there's really no drum beat. Mm-hmm. This is, I guess, part of the composition, but it's also a choice of the drummer saying, maybe I shouldn't play there. And there's sort of history of that in Giant's music where everybody in the band has such great time that they don't need somebody clicking the hi-hat or playing along to a click track. I remember once on a phone conversation I had with Pugwash, I said, did you guys record these songs to a click? And he said, no, we didn't record to a click. That's how we played. You played metronomically perfectly. Okay. Wow. Congratulations. That's quite an achievement, especially for that complexity of kind of music. So yeah, I feel like the three guys have to sort of be viewed in different ways, but nobody hooked up like John Weathers and Ray Shulman. I mean, that to me, you put that up with Alan White and Chris Squire, as far as I'm concerned, because that's a similar change for me too, is when Alan White steps into Yes, it becomes much more of a percussive, concussive, aggressive approach to the music, and they can play to a larger audience, a larger hall, and have the music be clear while the drums are really directing traffic and really moving the things, straight along and put the wheels on the wagon. So the rhythm section of Ray Shulman and John Weathers, to me, is underrated as well, as Ray Shulman is underrated both as a bass player and as a composer. So, people are going to be underrated, and some people are going to rate them very high. And that's why I hang out with people that like progressive music and work with them. People like Mike Keneally, who really understand, Giant, who respected Giant in the day? Frank Zappa. Frank Zappa was a big Gentle Giant fan. Well, there's a reason for that, That level of musicality would appeal to a composer. And also, I have to say, John Weathers just hit harder. John Weathers just hit harder, and he kept hitting harder and harder. And so that, plus he made everything sound easy. So he wouldn't make a big deal about a time change. It would just flow. And that's, the benefit that he had of being there longer too than someone like Martin Smith or Malcolm, because he had, at that point, the drumming on Octopus is just, it's legendary because it's always right. And again, don't forget, there are times on Octopus where there are no drums. it's just vocals on, the beginning of knots. It's like you're waiting for the drums. And then when the drums come in, they're just perfect and they're just what you want, if it's an accent or if it's a groove. So taste has a lot to do with it, but also composition has a lot to do with it. So respecting the compositions of Ray and Kerry is as much of a job of the Gentle Giant drummer as it is playing, I think, and respecting the music and knowing when to shut up, I think is important. Now, when we talk about Pugwash, Mr. John P., I'll give you a few. I happen to love what he plays in no particular order. I love what he plays on Time to Kill, on Freehand. I love what he plays on the song Interview. I love what he plays on, well, of course, the classic beat on So Sincere.
Yeah.
I mean, what would you play there? You could have played a million different drum things there, but the thing that pumps it through, that kind of thinking, which may or may not have come from the composer, may have come from John. I'm going to ask him when I have him on my show, but that kind of thing where it's just the right thing. Now, I also happen to really love I Lost My Head. So that's another John Weathers performance. I'll tell you, but maybe my top John Weathers is Mobile at the end of Freehand.
Do you ever play along with Gentle Giant songs? I mean,
certainly as a young person, I did it all the time. It was part of my training. I mean, it's the same thing about Mike Keneally. He said that he trained for the Frank Zappa gig by doing two things: learning the music of Frank Zappa and learning the guitar parts from the Gentle Giant music. So, there's a reason that those two things sort of fit together. Yeah, we were learning how to play from the best. And that's why I say unwittingly in my liner notes to the first Interzone record, like I didn't know I was being treated to a deluxe version of complicated music because there was a drummer like John Weathers who knew exactly what to do and what not to do. I didn't even know I was being treated to that. I was being schooled in that idea that not everybody can play a bunch of notes. Somebody's got to be the foundation. Somebody's got to be the person that puts the skeleton on it, and then the musculature and the face and the hair and all that goes on top of it. So yeah, I could go on. I mean, I happen to love his playing on Runaway. I love his playing on, I happen to really love the BBC version of Way of Life. Mm-hmm. I like John Weathers live as much as possible. Like John Weathers when he's really, really bringing it, and he can play a lot more so than when he's just kind of being tasteful. I love that. I get that. I know how important it is because you can't have like a lot unless you have a little first. There's no contrast, and Giant was all about contrast for me. I mean, I do put Weathers up there with Bonham in terms of importance of, what the drummer is doing in terms of the overall band sound. And I think that more people should, put him up there with Ginger Baker and Cream, put him up there with Bruford, with Alan White. So, I mean, for me, John Weathers, the tenure that he had, which was what? It was like 72 to 80, 8 years, just kept getting better and better and better. And maybe he wasn't always the recipient of the best mix, on those studio records, but you know, you go online now and watch the live performances, and you'll see what he brought. He was slamming.